Hello and welcome to Dialogue. I'm Yang Rui in Beijing. Massive protests have roiled Seoul for the second consecutive week as hundreds of thousands of South Koreans took to the streets calling for President Park Geun-hye's resignation. It was one of the biggest anti-government protests the country has ever seen. The president has already apologized twice, but that has done little to quell the rage of many South Koreans who say they feel betrayed. For now, Park's approval rating has sunk to 5%, and so prosecutors are set to question her. So what exactly is the fundamental reason why the public is so angry? What influence will it bring to the security of the Korean Peninsula? How should China deal with issues with South Korea and the US? To discuss these issues and more, I'm very happy to be joined in the studio by Dr. Su Ge, President of the China Institute of International Studies, and Anna Tangen, author and columnist. We'll also be joined by Professor Byeo-King Kim from the Korea University via telephone, and our correspondent Yu Jin Jiang in Seoul via satellite. But before we begin our discussion, let's take a look at this.
Last weekend, tens of thousands of South Koreans held protests in Seoul, calling for embattled President Park Geun-hye to resign.
Even regular people like myself came out here to add power to depose Park Geun-hye, as she is still staying in office shamelessly.
It was the third massive anti-Park protest since prosecutors began investigating her for having improper ties with alleged criminals.
Politics
and the South Korean economy are stagnant. We need further action from the government, but now it's such a mess. I hope this demonstration can rouse civilians and encourage politicians to work with a bigger sense of responsibility so that the country will become better.
Prosecutors are set to question President Park over allegations of political corruption. She is accused of allowing her friend Choi Soon-sil to manipulate power from behind the scenes. It will be the first time a sitting South Korean president has been questioned by prosecutors. The so-called Choigate crisis has engulfed her presidency.
최순실 씨는 과거 제가 어려움을 겪을 때 도와준 인연으로
President Park has publicly apologized for her poor judgment, fired several staff members, and even accepted the opposition party's choice for a new prime minister. But none of these actions have quelled voters' rage. Park's approval rating hovers at around 5%. She recently announced she is earnestly considering ways to normalize state affairs. Regardless what the proposals may be, Park has a lot of hard work ahead.
Gentlemen, what's going to happen to the president, Park Geun-hye, next?
Well, this remains to be seen. Lots of uncertainty, because if it's domestic politics or internal politics of our neighboring country, probably I shouldn't say too much about it. But like viewers from around the world, people are watching what's happening. And when you hear the story behind it, sometimes it feels hard to believe. And when Park lost her parents, Choi's father, and went in and counseling her, and finally they became very close friends. But in the end, I think that why the Korean population is so angry, because they feel that they felt that the President Park has violated the state secret law by letting her close friend to intervene in some state affairs which she should not. Anyway,
I would be a little bit more harsh on this situation. What she did was she allowed her be played like a puppet on a string. This is a woman who, and this was not simply they became friends. This gentleman was telling her that he could communicate with her mother, and through him he would channel everything that she should do. She gave herself completely over, first to the father and then his daughter. The daughter's wife, now ex-husband, was one of her chief aides. So it became quite apparent that she was completely in the thrall of these people. Now remember, $70 million was collected by two sham charities, which were used basically to take care of herself and her daughter's equestrian career. So I think people are looking at this and they're saying, who was really in control of this office? She was sold by the Conservative Party as the Iron Lady, the woman who, when her mother was killed, assassinated, said, is the defensive line in place? Right? This showed a high degree of dedication. She was very, very heavily supported by the elderly and also by these large corporations, Samsung, Hyundai, Lotte, all corporations which were funneling money into these particular charities.
Yeah, story is looming larger, and there's a big picture, many talking points. But let me cross over to Eugene for her comments about the immediate future for President Park Geun-hye. Do you think she's likely to resign, Eugene?
Well, from what we've seen, it does not look like the president has any intention to step down immediately. Local news here citing sources within the presidential house that President Park believes that a president stepping down from office goes against the Constitution. Also, another source also quoted to have said, how can a president step down with just allegations? And President Park will stick to her responsibility as president, as mentioned in the Constitution. So we can see her mentioning the Constitution and using that as a reason to stay in office. And also through her lawyer, she has said that the prosecution's questioning cannot happen on Tuesday or Wednesday as originally requested by prosecutors. So they've set the final deadline to this Friday, but at this point it's not even clear if the president will respond willingly, although she did say that anyone found related to the scandal should be held accountable, including herself.
Do you believe what police is doing could be called a criminal investigation, and that will seriously undermine the authority of the president herself? Therefore, whatever the legitimacy of the presidency, President Park is likely to be seriously crippled in terms of her influence and authority. So what do you think of her political career, Eugene?
Well, it would really depend on how this political scandal gets resolved, and I'm not even sure if surviving the scandal for her would be possible, because it is the biggest political scandal she's faced during her presidency. As you mentioned earlier, her approval ratings have dropped to an all-time low. Even the older generation of South Koreans who look up to her late father, a former president, have turned against her. Latest figures by Gallup Korea showing her approval ratings remaining at 5% for 2 consecutive weeks, and she has more than a year left of her 5-year single-term presidency. And in terms of foreign policy, is not going to attend the upcoming APEC meeting, which makes her the first South Korean president not to go in APEC's 20-plus year of history. And for domestic issues, as you saw with the lowest public support and the 1 million people turnout in that protest last Saturday, it would be near impossible to get her political agenda across. I mean, other presidents in the past have experienced low approval ratings before, but that usually kicked in last year and not like this.
What do you think of the domestic politics? I know you hate to make comments about the domestic intricacy concerning the future of President Park, but is she likely to cede much of her presidential power to the parliament, since she has fired the prime minister and the newly appointed premier actually comes from the opposition parties?
Well, it depends on a lot of things, but the only thing I can see that the developments of the events have added too many uncertainties to the Korean domestic politics. Number one, that is what is the how it's going on with the prosecutors. Are they going to press on this? And all depends on whether the opposition and the President Park can reach some kind of understanding, because the Park had already made apologies to the public at least several times, nominated a person to be the new prime minister. Whether that would be accepted by the opposition. And that being said, I would say that she is a very weak president. And when
you mean
domestic Park. And,
Dr. Suga says basically President Park has become a lame dog, and given the current investigation, which will be devastating for her presidential authority, do you think her political future is over?
No, no. There's no question about her political future. It's done. The question is the political maneuvering behind. And what you have is the opposition. There are 3 candidates who are milling around, trying to figure out how they can get in to be the president the next time around. The question is, if she were to resign, there would have to be an election within 60 days. And everybody is trying to figure out what the timing would be best for them before they start pushing one thing or another. But when you have 1 million people in the street, 5% ratings, you're done. The question is, do you leave peacefully, or do they cede control to a opposition faction who can govern?
Eugene, the most tragic part of the presidential history in your country is that one of the predecessors of President Park committed suicide. He jumped from the cliff. Now, I'm not indicating something nasty, but what do you think will be the worst case scenario for President Park? And can you brief us about the latest development concerning the 2 foundations controlled by Choi?
It's just too early to be talking about where this will lead to, because the prosecution's investigations are still ongoing, and again, President Park is, they're waiting for President Park to respond, to get questioned, and as we mentioned, this will make President Park the first sitting South Korean president to be questioned by the prosecution over a criminal case. Already she has made a lot of history, 1 million people gathering on the streets to protest against demanding a president to step down, and the lowest approval ratings also, but none of these have actually are showing that President Park is going to step down anytime soon. So we can see that she is bracing for the long term, and the local media are reporting it that way as well. So right now, it doesn't seem like this is going to get resolved in the near future. So we will have to wait and see regarding that.
Eugene, politics.
And your second question about the yes.
Eugene, politics aside, you are a very elegant lady. Now let's talk about very close relationship between girls and ladies. Confidant is the issue. Do you think, as the daughter of 2 victims of political assassination, she has been badly, very much hungry for trust, and a trust that can be rarely shared by even her closest family members? Therefore, she turned to Choi. And what's your human response towards this very unusual relationship? Is that just a result of the religion? Or psychologically, you have your own independent judgment?
That is a very difficult question to answer. I mean, a lot of media reports have been done here in Korea about President Park's background, very unique background, about how she lost both her parents in a very tragic way, and how that could have molded her personality, and also, as you mentioned, that could have led her to seek for someone outside of her family that she could trust. In her latest apology to the nation, she did say that she had relied on Choi Soon-sil to provide advice for her. She mentioned that it was because she was unable to reach out to her family, as she didn't want them to interfere with her term in office. So that is why she wanted to reach out to her close friend, as she called it, Choi Soon-sil. So by talking about their friendship, their special friendship, that is how President Park has positioned Choi Soon-sil. But you have to remember that President Park is the president. We're not talking about just a friendship between 2 women or 2 females, or 2 people, in fact. As a sitting president, she is obliged to keep state secrets within the presidential house. So the reason that this scandal is becoming so big, and the reason why 1 million people are turning up on the streets with their children, some of them, is because of the fact that President Park gave someone with absolute no government title, no government authority, access to presidential documents or speeches before they were given, and also the fact that Choi Soon-sil was allowed to exert these power because of this special friendship with the president. That is exactly why the people here are so angry and feel betrayed. They're actually asking fundamental questions about the meaning of democracy in this country, and they're even asking who is it that they voted for president? Is it President Park Geun-hye or is it Choi Soon-sil?
Thank you very much. That's Eugene, our correspondent based in Seoul. We are talking about the political ramification and fallout of President Park Geun-hye, who is deeply mired in perhaps the worst political upheavals that we have seen in this country, the ROK. We'll be back in a short while. Stay with us, please. Welcome back. Let's take a closer look at the democracy itself in South Korea. The full experiment with universal suffrage is well into the second century. South Korea is a young democracy, but it is already a standout model for other Asian countries. In just 6 presidential elections, opposition candidates have won twice. With each new administration, democracy in terms of the expansion of rights and the improvement of governance has moved forward. So is all this president scandal just made worse by the media, and will it all die down eventually, Anna?
No. There's every single president has had a major scandal, one of them leading to the suicide of the then president. It has become endemic. What happens is, in order to get the political support you need to become president, to get the votes, a lot of money is needed. And there is not a legal way to do this. We see this repeated over and over around the world. In the US, it's legal. You can give campaign funds and things like that. In other countries, it's not legal. And what happens is it becomes an issue of background slush funds, how to get these things done. I mean, this is true in India and other places around the world.
And if neither side or no side is ready to make any political compromise, are we going to have an arbitrator who will act like a Supreme Court, very much like the situation in the closest race in the US presidential history between Al Gore and Bush for the second term? For the first term, right? So will someone act as a broker, the middle force, so that there will be a compromise? What do you think of the future?
Yeah, speaking of democracy, it seems to me that it's a double-edged sword, both sides. And that reminds me of a Chinese analogy, which compares the government to a boat, which compares to the populace, to the people, as the water. The analogy goes that the water can either hold up the boat, or it can also make it upside down. That being said, so it depends on, it remains to be seen whether the popular anger is so strong they insisted, although already you mentioned that this protest has been going on for days, or even has entered the second week, and then how long that's going to ask. And also, I think it depends on the political will of the presidency. If he insists to stay on, that's going to drag until some opposition is already mentioning the possibility of impeachment. So everything just depends on the further movement of this of the whole events.
Let me cross over to Professor Byung-Ki Kim, who's standing by on the phone. Hello, Professor Kim.
Hello. How are you? Thank you for having me.
We are talking about democracy in your country. Not long ago, prior to the opening ceremony of the Olympics in Brazil, the former president Rousseff was impeached by the parliament, by the strong opposition. This time around, in the case of South Korea, no one was seriously talking about impeachment. But we have to find a solution to the current political crisis. What's your take?
Well, I really I don't think that you should be going too far, because the case is very different. Number one, as you know, the level of democratic development in Korea is probably the strongest in East Asia and globally. So the standard is extremely high. And with that respect, the impeachment process, in order to move on, would need the following. Number one, you would need the Supreme Constitutional Court to examine whether it's impeachable, and only when the standing president has committed state against a crime, which is attempting to throw the state or espionage or something equal to that level, and no legal decision has been made by the prosecution or by the special prosecution. The second problem, of course, is that the impeachment process moves. You need 2/3 of the parliament to mobilize, and then so it's not an easy process. Not to mention the decision which needs to be taken by the Constitutional Court. The shortest time possible would be 7 to 8 months. And then, of course, the reality of the impeachment process is that the court has to rule. But I would argue that the Supreme Court judges are filled by both the current president and the immediate preceding Lee Myung-bak, so that's not also an easy process.
Professor Kim, let's move from diplomacy. Sorry, let's move from democracy to diplomacy. I was told the strong opposition voice in your country has asked the president to fire the defense minister so that the intelligence report sharing will be suspended between South Korea and Japan. What's likely to happen next?
No, as you've if you look at the events yesterday and today, number one, the popularity rate of the opposition has not gone up. So people are not happy with the opposition neither. It's just the president and the perception of all the challenges that are being exposed today. But with respect to foreign policy, number one, the pre-MOU agreement between Japan and Korea has already been signed yesterday. The president has appointed the second vice minister of foreign affairs today. The Ministry of Defense has signed an MOU with a private multinational on whose site the high-altitude anti-air defense system will be instituted. The president has received President Nazarbayev of Kazakhstan yesterday. So, I mean, as of this moment, I cannot fortune tell, but I can tell you that right now it does not seem that foreign policy will be moving out of the orbit.
Thank you very much, Anna. In his phone conversation with President Park, the president-elect Donald Trump promised to maintain U.S. to the defense of South Korea. Does it mean that the THAAD anti-missile battery will continue to be deployed, whatever?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's no question.
There will be the consequences. Do you think China would seize this opportunity to persuade the embattled president of Park Geun-hye to reconsider the anti-missile battery? That will seriously harm the relationship with both the PRC and Russia.
Well, speaking of THAAD, it hurts the strategic interests of both China and Russia. And then when you look at the radius, it does not even cover the security missile defense is concerned. It does not even cover Seoul. And also it's designed for high altitude, defense. It cannot, defend weaponry like Scud missiles. Therefore, I think I would call all parties concerned to exercise restraint and do things that would be conducive to peace, stability in the region. After all, the nuclear issue in the peninsula should be resolved through the six-party talks.
And I wonder if you are closely aware or acutely aware of whatever political maneuvers in the DPRK. We have a very shrewd, young but shrewd politician, Kim Jong-un, who might be watching out very closely as to what's going to happen in the southern neighbor. And do you think he's likely to undertake any provocative moves so that they will take advantage of the situation and continue with the whatever tests?
Well, that's a real question. A couple of days ago, the young leader visited the forward sites, the batteries that were fired on the island. This is going to be the 6th anniversary of that. This was the shelling of the South Korean island. That is 7 days away. Both the U.S. and South Korea are gritting for some show of force by this young leader to show that he's still in the game and pushing it. I don't know what this would prove or help him in terms of this, but everyone is expecting something.
Whenever the PRC talk peninsula, first and foremost, we address the issue of stability. And then peace. Peace means nuclear tests and the consequences it's likely to bring about. So this time around, do you think the general situation across the divided Korean peninsula will be undermined? It's going to be transformed into a kind of geopolitical threat?
Well, it looks like there's going to be more uncertainty. Let me just quote a line in English that is, eye for eye causes more blindness. And we need to have restraint. And the Chinese policy towards the solution of the Korean Peninsula quandary is this, is three-pronged. That's number one, denuclearization of the peninsula. Number two, peace stability. Number three, peaceful negotiations.
What do you think of our concerns?
Well, the reality is that the nuclear issue is something that the West and Korea should solve because they have the most leverage with these things. I think China is most concerned about destabilization of North Korea, which is a real concern. This has been a very impoverished area for quite some time. There could be mass migrations if something were to happen. It's a very delicate situation. It has to be handled. I don't know that that is necessarily helping the issue, but from the South Korean perspective, it looks like they, with this intelligence sharing, that they're linking up with the Aegis destroyers and also the THAAD missile program that is in Japan. And this would form a net that is basically kind of encircling China. And this, I think, is what is making China very nervous.
Very quickly, Anna. What do you make of the current quarrel between, I mean, during on the campaign trail, President-elect Donald Trump asked Japan and South Korea to share the military spending for maintaining the forward military presence of the U.S. But the South Koreans said, yeah, we're going to increase the spending to cover up to 40%. What do you think of, and what do you think of the issue about nuclear armament? President-elect Donald Trump says you got to bear the burden, otherwise we're going to withdraw the nuclear umbrella.
Well, I think people are still trying to figure out the difference between what Donald Trump said and what he'll actually do. I think what more frightening was his what he said. He said they should just arm themselves nuclear and then we can withdraw. I think a lot of people, including China, took that, and Russia took that as a threat.
Some sources in South Korea threatened to go nuclear should this president-elect really withdraw. We're going to see what's going to happen next about the political crisis in South Korea. Until then, goodbye.